Hey y'all, it's Sean's Trains here. Since this year marks the 40th anniversary of when the Polar Express book first came out, I thought I'd read this old copy that I have right here. I thought I'd read it to y'all, just so I'm pretty sure most of y'all know how it sounds like. Get my reading glasses on so it's better. Alright, here we go. The Polar Express. Written and illustrated by Allsburg. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear. The ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. There is no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night, I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked throughout my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the train cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe, and I tiptoed downstairs and out the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," was his answer. "This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand, and he pulled me aboard. The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols, and we ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot chocolate as thick as rich as melted chocolate bars outside. The lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon, there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forests, where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. It's just like the movie. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, which is known as the Great Polar Ice Cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first we saw no elves. They were gathering at the center of the city. The conductor told us that is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas. "Who receives the first gift?" we all asked. "He will choose one of you," the conductor answered. "Look," shouted one of the children, "the elves!" Outside, we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no farther, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound like nothing I'd ever hear. Across the circle, the elves moved apart and Santa Claus appeared. And the elves cheered widely. He marched over to us and, pointing to me, said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped to his sleigh. The conductor handed me up, and I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from the reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa, and he stood holding the bell high above him, and he called out, "The first gift of Christmas." A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh, and Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip, and his team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled us once, then he disappeared in the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. But when I reached into my pocket, the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said. But it was all too late. The train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. Yeah, this part of the movie, the part itself in the movie was actually pretty sad. I'm not even gonna lie. That because the journey itself, it changed the boy's whole life. All right, here we go. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Merry Christmas!" he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. This is another scene that has been dissipated in the movie. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked like as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver sleigh bell, and along with it was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Better fix that hole in your pocket." Signed, Mr. C. I shook the bell and it made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." Probably because they haven't believed. When I shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. Again, they didn't believe. And I think you all know what I'm about to say next, because this is the last part of the movie. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it felt silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. And that, my friends, was the Polar Express. I hope y'all have enjoyed it, and I hope every single one of you has a very safe and blessed Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.